Thank you very much for very quick but comprehensive overview of the Korean economy and U.S. economy and global financial market and implications of Korea-U.S. FTA. In sum, actually, he brought us to the one good news and one bad news. Good news is that from a long-term perspective, Korean economy is still doing okay and is generally optimistic about the future of Korean economy. On the other hand, the bad news is from cyclical and short-term point of view, U.S. economy will have to be slowed down and may have to experience a recession, and that has a negative impact on the rest of the world, and particularly this part of the world. So that is bad news. But I think it still is a really probabilistic issue. There are people who take still a different view on this particular issue, even at the cyclical aspect of the U.S. economy and economy. But anyway, with this, we still have about 30 minutes or so. So if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand and make your point. Yes, Dr.
Thank you very much, Jerry. You covered really a number of fields, but let me concentrate on the U.S.-Korea FTA. With respect to your comments, U.S.-Korea FTA brought in a very severe product competition. But unfortunately, in Korea, government just focused on the U.S.-Korea will be beneficial to Korea because Korea will have expanded export marketing opportunity into the U.S. market. So we downplayed, in a sense, a product competition, which might cause a alert from business community and so on. But I think your point is essentially correct. This is an opportunity for Korea to upgrade our overall system. And second, I think given your pessimistic prospects on the ratification of Korea-U.S. FTA on the part of the U.S. Congress, some predicted that perhaps in the 2009, the U.S. Congress will eventually ratify the pact. Number one, U.S. Congress have never rejected the FTA deal proposed by the administration. And second, I think the current Democratic presidential candidate would change their mind once the presidential candidate is determined from the National Convention, as President Clinton did in the NAFTA ratification case. And the third point is that, as Karen Bhatia pointed out at the U.S. congressional hearing, if the U.S. fails to ratify this Korea-U.S. FTA, U.S. is going to tarnish its image as a free trade nation, as well as the U.S. will lose a great opportunity to link a third largest economic power in the world and the economy, which plays a critical role in the East Asian integration process. In other words, U.S.-Korea FTA will provide the opportunity for the U.S. to establish a very important formal link toward increasingly integrating East Asian. So what is your view on these points?
Would you clarify this? You said 2009?
Yeah, 2009.
That's too late.
That means after the election of the U.S. Congress.
Right.
And regarding that, there's another view that Korean National Assembly should ratify first, so that we can give a pressure on the U.S. Congress. So what is your view on this Korea's strategy?
So I am happy to hear that optimism about ratification is still alive in Korea. I heard this reference, Mr. An's reference to 2009 as well, and I think that's exactly correct, that the presidential election in the U.S. is, of course, November 2008, and nothing can happen before then. So the best scenario is one in which ratification occurs quickly after the election, because as you say, a successful candidate will then morph magically into a statesman and a global leader rather than a populist candidate. And there is some precedent for that kind of development. I think Bill Clinton moved in that direction, so one could imagine that outcome as well. What renders me more pessimistic is that I think the Congress is much more protectionist and much more skeptical about the merits of these kind of arrangements than, say, in the early 1990s when Bill Clinton came into office. So a new president would have a more difficult task of building the coalition of support in Congress for ratification. If these recession fears about the United States prove correct, that will not bode well for ratification either. There will be more concern about unemployment. There will be more of the standard blame game where foreign competition is being blamed for the unemployment. So that will not help either. We have to hope that any slowdown in the U.S. will be short and mild from the point of view of FTA ratification. I think the strongest pro-ratification card in the Congress is the security card, that the U.S. wants South Korea as a security ally, that the U.S. is worried about the North Korea problem, and to be on good political relations between Seoul and Washington for security-related reasons are important. So now to embarrass and antagonize one's ally in Seoul over the FTA would be counterproductive from the point of view of working with Seoul on the North Korea issue. So I think that's the, if you will, the card to play, and the main reason I hope that the politicians will see the light and the importance of ratifying the FTA.
Well, Larry, thank you for your number of very profoundly insightful observations about the Korean economy as well as of the global world. I have two questions. First, the bad news that you have given us sounded to me much worse than Dr. Sagong made it sound out to be. Here my question is, Dr. Sagong, assuming that your forecast is correct, describe the anticipated U.S. recession as a short-term development. And my question is, how short is going to be this short-term in your view? How long will it take for the U.S. and the world to fix this subprime mortgage mess and come out rebounding again? And secondly, you said that you implied that with intensified market competition in Korea, we could complete the job of upgrading the Korean system. And you implied this, you didn't say this, but you implied that we could get back on a higher economic growth path. Over the last 4.5 years, the average growth rate has been about 4%. And the currently leading opposition party contender is arguing that he will bring up the growth rate to 7% by upgrading the system exactly in the way that you have described. Do you think this will be possible?
Okay. Let me invite One more question.
My name is Chris Moon. I'm the CEO of the American Industrial Company Limited. I also chair the FTA Special Committee at the PICA. Just first one comment. You read Wall Street Journal. There's been a lot of sort of warning from Greenspan. And I do think the American financial sector took it very seriously. I thought your comment about Asian slow was a little unkind because the Americans' financial market should be much more aware of that. Again, with the Wall Street Journal, there's plenty of bad news when you read them. And the economic slowdown in the U.S. really a series of started and well in progress, despite a lot of optimistic comments by some of the economists. My question is, it's somewhat related to the earlier question, how are we going to fix it? So if you're the economic advisor to the next president of the United States, how would you advise him on this issue? Where does FTA fit in? Korea-US FTA fit within this context?
Maybe just one more piece. President Chu.
My name is Dong Jae from Shinhan Bank, and I have a question on this subprime mortgage thing. That you said that Asian investors are pretty slow in appreciating the gravity of these subprime mortgage problems, and that it is true that we should admit that. However, still that I couldn't really agree. Why is that serious problems? As I see that the total size of these bad debts is a few $100 billion, whereas your total size of your financial market is a few tens of $trillions. And as I see that these problems is that coming from this segregation of CDOs and bonds in several different credit ratings and derivatives, and these products sold to so many investors and fund managers, and fund managers cannot give daily valuations of what they're selling. So as I feel that this problem is more of the supervisory authorities and markets do not understand the size of problems and where the problems lie and how much and who has these risks. So then, however, that as I mentioned earlier, the total size of the problem is just a few $100 billion, which is not too big for America to handle. Please correct me that if I'm wrong.
Collecting questions creates difficulties for the speaker when you get so many good questions on so many different things. What kind of recession should we expect? That's a hard one, Forecasting a recession is difficult, risky business, and now we not only want to give you the yes/no question, but we want me to tell you how deep and how long. That's really hard for a forecaster. I think what we should hope for is a relatively shallow downturn, but one that unavoidably is going to be quite long because of its basis in residential construction. So a lot of what has been done is that people have built tremendous numbers of houses out in the desert where nobody wants to live and nobody can afford to buy. You have a physical mismatch between a physical capital stock, which are mainly in residential construction, and demand, and redeploying that stuff. You know, you can't pick up the houses and move them very easily. So there is a big physical backlog as well that is going to be, I think, a drag on the financial system and the economy. So I'm reminded, as I am often reminded, of the 1930s. In the United States, we had a big housing boom in the 1920s. It was concentrated then. Partly, you know, the most recent one has been concentrated in Florida and in the Southwest and in the interior, in the Central Valley of California. That one was in Florida, and that one was a drag on the U.S. economy for the better part of a decade because the land had been subdivided, the houses had been built, nobody wanted to buy them, and working down associated financial obligations took time. So I think, again, because there is this physical legacy, it may take quite a while to work this out. You asked me also about Korean politics, and I refuse to be drawn to tell you whether I think 5 plus 2 or 7% is more realistic. Although were I prepared to be drawn, I would probably say 7% is very optimistic, I think, for a relatively mature, relatively high-income country. But most of us would probably be happy with 5 or 6. So I think Korea can do better. I think 7% is optimistic target. Maybe politicians should be in the business of having optimistic targets. But then they've got to do it, right?
You are being political now.
I apologize if I gave slightly the wrong impression about how Asian investors have been slow to appreciate what's going on. They're certainly not alone. American investors have been very slow to appreciate what's been going on as well. I'm struck by, you know, with benefit of hindsight, much of this is inevitable and what's like writing on the wall, that the search for yield and all this money flowing into all kinds of speculative high-risk investments was a consequence of the vast amounts of liquidity in global financial markets. People looking for somewhere to get some yield, so they were looking for the mezzanine tranche of CDOs, and even though they didn't know what was really in them. And once central banks began to normalize the level of interest rates, which the Fed began to do more than 2 years ago, and the Bank of Japan has begun to follow, it was clear that more normal risk premia were going to reemerge, and that would create difficulties for highly leveraged investors in this risky paper. So the fact that they didn't see this coming, and they continued to buy, you know, all this risky stuff because their competitors were buying all this risky stuff, and they wanted to match their benchmarks. Now we can say with benefit of hindsight, they were slow on the uptake, and that's why we're in the mess that we are now. I think the problem, two things are likely to make the problem larger than simply the size of the CDO market by itself would suggest. One is that it seems to be having significant spillovers to other parts of U.S. financial markets. Like the commercial paper market is dead, totally dead. Nobody can issue commercial paper in the United States now. So we need to hope that this is a temporary phenomenon and that the extraordinary steps that Fed is taking through the discount window and other devices are going to solve that problem and limit the damage to the CDO market, that firms with decent credit will be able to issue commercial paper and get lines of credit from their banks. Again, the banks are not lending either. There was an interesting article by David Wessel in the Wall Street Journal, much quoted here yesterday, where he asked whether the Fed had the capacity to get the commercial paper market and bank lending up and running, or not, whether its toolbox was adequate to the task, or whether in this highly uncertain, risky environment, you can give the banks liquidity and they're just going to sit on it, the liquidity trap a la Japan. In a different form, this time driven by risk rather than low interest rates. So we're going to have to wait and see. The other reason to think this is a big problem is that a big thing driving consumption in the United States has been mortgage refinancing, and U.S. households have been taking an average of $750 billion a year. That's actually real money, even by the size of the U.S. economy, out of their homes through refinancing at lower interest rates each year for the last few years, and now that's stopped. So that's going to be a negative hit on consumption as well, quite independent of these little financial difficulties in the market for CDOs. What caused it? What have we learned from it? What can we do to prevent it from happening again? I would emphasize, I would point to three things, and I would point to the delicious irony that these are things that the United States and the International Monetary Fund criticized Asia for 10 years ago. Now everyone is going to be criticizing the United States for them. Instead, one is lack of transparency, so nobody knows what is actually in these securities or what exactly is off the bank balance sheets and what the risks are. Greater financial transparency is going to help. Although the other thing we've learned, which I think is useful for Washington, D.C. to know, is that transparency can only get you so far. And every time the regulators demand more transparency, the rocket scientists find a way of repackaging and disguising the risks. So transparency isn't going to solve the problem of volatility, but I think it will help. Secondly, tighter bank regulation. A lot of the problem here has been that the banks have been moving off balance sheet risks that regulation is designed to contain, so they've been creating, investment conduits off balance sheet to which they've been lending short, and that have turned around and invested long in 30-year mortgages. So to tighten up the bank regulation again in the United States and make it work, bad bank regulation, another thing the U.S. or the fund came to Asia and slapped everybody's risks over. That's a big problem in the U.S. too. And third, the rating agency problem, that the rating agencies, I think, have had a conflict of interest, that they have advised customers on how to structure security issues and told them if you structure them in the following way, this tranche will get a AAA rating, and then they have an incentive to give a AAA rating. So I think firewalls or regulation that prevents the same company from doing these two different activities that create a conflict of interest would be desirable as well. So Asian concerns about the operation of the major rating agencies, here's the silver lining, will now be taken more seriously, I think, in Washington, D.C.
Okay. Yes, Dudley. Here.
Yeah, first of all, let me congratulate you for your very excellent presentation on the quite comprehensive topics. I would like to go back to the trade issues. As you might hear that Korean government pursuing so-called simultaneous humanitarian trade FTA policies. So according to the government plan, Korea will make FTAs with 52 countries by year 2012, and then among Korean trade, more than 55% of trade will be made through FTA. So my question is that, do you think that these the policies and the so-called bilateral free trade agreement process or so-called bilateral approach is possible? Another question is that you mentioned already that for the pessimistic view that ratification process will be capital gain. Do you think that some kind of negotiation with that Korea's FTAs with EU or other so-called competitors, United States, might have to expedite ratification process in the capital gain? That's my thought.
Yeah, I prefer multilateral liberalization and a serious WTO rally to more bilaterals. I come to Korea and I enjoy North-to-South Cabernet, but I'd much rather see California wine being sold and consumed here. So there is this trade diversion cost of going the bilateral route, but I think the multilateral route is not going to be productive now for a while, mainly, partly because of the same protectionist inclination in the U.S., and partly because countries like Brazil and India are becoming more assertive, which just complicates the process of getting everybody on board for a global trade round. So in this second best world, I think it makes sense for Korea to pursue bilaterals instead. And in that context, the more the better. There's no reason not to. Given, there is a problem that negotiators can only effectively deal with so much at any point in time. The United States only has so many skilled trade negotiators. Korea only has so many skilled trade negotiators, so you can't do 53 simultaneously, but I think to do them relatively quickly in sequence makes sense. It is a desirable second best strategy when the first best is not available. And in that context, I think another potential small benefit of pursuing an FTA with the EU would be to ratchet up the pressure on the United States a little bit to make it clear that Korea has alternatives. I'm not sure that would make a big difference. As I said before, to play the security card, I think might be the most effective political tactic here.
Okay.
But in the EU FTA, I think has much to say for it on its own merits.
Okay, I think we have to end it. Professor Eichengreen has to go to KDI and he has a series of meetings before he leaves. So I think this FTA thing, again, our mutual friend Jeffrey Schacht still thinks that there's a chance. Because Bush administration may have some kind of negotiation and with the Congress, because this Korea-US FTA is the largest FTA initiative they ever took since the NAFTA, and so this is actually outgoing administration. From the outgoing administration's point of view, this is one of the big achievements that they have to have. So some kind of deal can be struck. And although, there is a political reality, but I think there is a chance. And Jeffrey Schacht's point is that so far the opposing voices been heard so much, but once actual debate is going on at the Capitol Hill, then the general mood can be done. So it's at least optimistic. Right, but I will have to wish for it. Actually, at the beginning, what I was alluded to was that Korea should, the Korean government should submit this FTA to the Congressional, the National Assembly approval soon. I understand it's still submitted in September, and President is working on it, I'm sure. And then I think we should expedite our FTA with Europe, and we should use that leverage to some extent. But anyway, so there is still maybe probability is not that high, but I think there is still a chance. With regard to this Korean economic situation, I think I generally agree with you. However, with due respect, I think if this statement is taken wrongly, I think the complacency can be on the part of policymakers and politicians can be an issue. In my view, you didn't actually why Korean investment is not as robust as it used to be. Of course, foreign economies are maturing. You cannot expect that high investment as it used to. But still, there's room for high investment. Once the business environment, investment environment is different, for example, labor relations. Once you change the computational labor relations and the rigidity of labor markets will be to some extent, I think there will be how about government regulations, interventions. We have all sorts of regulations which are preventing investment in metropolitan solar area, and a lot of things can happen. And also, as you rightly mentioned, once we introduce more competition, and we can increase the total effective productivity to a large extent, and therefore we can increase our growth potential. According to BOK and the KDI's current estimation, our growth potential is somewhere around 4.7 to 5.3. But I think it's racing to a 6%. Yes, I don't think that is a big gap. As you said, 7% may be difficult to achieve, but I think it's a room for achievement. And one interesting thing, I think KDI is in your point to KDI. One of the KDI research fellows had an estimation about the rule of law implementation. In Korea, this rule of law is not very well respected and implemented. And so if we implement the rule of law as on the OECD average, we argue that 1% of the growth increase. And we are among the OECD, Korea is third from bottom, only next to Turkey and Mexico in terms of the rule of law abiding. So I think there is a room. And for once we improve business environment and higher investment and the improvement efficiency. When we were in school in the United States, and we remember when the U.S. economy grew over 3%, 2.5%, the race war of inflation. But that economy is mature and big, but still only grew almost 5% in recent years. And how could you explain that? And Korea, again, I think we are still at 20,000 per capita income level. And 5% can be. So I guess we're to what you have just said. I think there is room for improvement and for increase in raising our speed of growth. Yeah, right. Yes. And with the US FTA, I think we can do much better. This is my personal view, and I think really we can do 6% is not that difficult at all. US economy grow 5%. Why not for Korea? And
I'm going to make a note of that forecast, so the next time I'm back here, we can do that.
Okay, with this we have to end, and I really appreciate very much for your sharing your very enlightening view with us as always. And we always welcome you, and I'm sure we're getting back soon to this forum again. Thank you very much.